Good afternoon and welcome to the LFS podcast for our third week in a row. And this week we've got a lot of transfer stuff to talk about. We have the PFA Team of the Year, Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year that was announced in the last few days. Plus we'll run you through all of the results from the first Premier League weekend of the season. And I'll talk about my thoughts and feelings around all 10 games from last weekend. And some big winners and some big losers, because a lot of new managers, a lot of new regimes, and a lot of clubs looking for a fresh start. And we'll see how they got off in the opening weekend of the new season. Lots of transfer stuff to get to. But before I do, don't forget that LFS is now on audio platforms. The LFS podcast on Spotify and on Amazon Music as well. Both episodes are on Spotify now. Last week and the week before, so if you want to catch up on our Premier League predictions, that's quite a long one. An hour and 45 minutes. In the first week, we talked more about transfers and updates around the leagues as well in pre-season then. So you can catch up on those. And if you want to listen to this one on audio on the go, you will hear it within the next 24 hours. It will be live on Spotify and other areas as well. Plus, our new Patreon page will also have all of these podcasts. So if you want to catch up there and sign up there, we've had a few memberships. And if you want to join us, we'll have a couple of members stuff coming up there, and we'll let you know about that in future weeks. Right, let's get into this week's show, because there's a lot to talk about, and we have to start where else but with transfers. Of course, the window closes in 9 days time. This time next Friday it will be transfer deadline day, and all these little moves will have to be concluded. And we start with a big move this afternoon. That man on the left of your screen, more like a model photo in his reveal to becoming a Chelsea player. João Felix has signed for Chelsea, marking it how many players now? Over 100 players that they've signed, probably. Under Todd Bowley, but João Felix is the next one. He joins from Atletico Madrid for a fee in the region of £45 million. Of course, Conor Gallagher, that whole deal, that whole saga has been going on for the last week and a half to 2 weeks. About he wants to move to Atletico Madrid. Chelsea wanted him to move on. They need to move him on for pure profit, to kind of bolster their FFP, whatever the term is, profit and sustainability details in terms of their financial bracket that they have. They wanted to move him on and get someone else coming the other way. In that sense, João Felix is going to be that player, because of course the player that was originally meant to come in that deal, then that deal fell through. They couldn't come to personal agreements, but João Felix will join Chelsea, and Conor Gallagher is going the other way to Atletico Madrid for around £33 million. That whole deal for Gallagher to go to Atletico from Chelsea hasn't changed. It was just the player coming the other way in terms of Atletico to Chelsea has now been João Felix. He signed a 7-year deal to begin a second spell at Stamford Bridge. Of course, he scored 4 goals and 20 appearances during a loan spell in West London in 2023. In being revealed, João Felix says, I'm really happy to be back at Chelsea, and I can't wait to get started. I can see some familiar faces from the last time I was here, which is always nice. I mean, he's going to see a lot of faces. Over 40 players Chelsea have in their squad. Gallagher, meanwhile, signed a 5-year contract with the Spanish top flight clubs. So Gallagher, 5-year contract for him. He joined Chelsea at the age of 6 and went on to make 90 appearances, scoring 10 goals. But of course, Gallagher had entered the final year of his contract at Stamford Bridge, so Chelsea knew that it was going to be this summer or bust, really, because they weren't going to give him a new contract, and they knew that if they wanted money on him and profit on him, they had to sell him in this window, because of course in the final year of contract, if you're down to less than 6 months on your contract, you can talk to other clubs and go on a Bosman free, agree that 6 months before, and then go in the following window this following summer, which would mean that Conor Gallagher would have left on a free transfer. But of course, will be joining Atletico for £33 million. Of course, Gallagher did write on social media and Instagram about leaving the club. He says, to everyone at Chelsea, thank you for making my dreams come true. It's been an absolute honour every time I put on the shirt, and it was a dream come true to captain the team on many occasions. I loved every moment. These memories will last forever. I appreciate all the love and support from the fans. Well, it's been a crazy saga in this, but João Felix is a great player that Chelsea can bring into the squad. It's not that they're lacking in quality, is they've actually got too many players, and there's been a bit of controversy over Raheem Sterling. There's been a few developments there. Sterling's made his thoughts known about the situation at Chelsea. He's not quite happy at the moment, and it is the feeling within Chelsea that has been reported this afternoon in the last day or two that he will move on, Raheem Sterling. Don't know where, don't know who, but it looks like he's been disgruntled behind the scenes. He's made that clear to the manager, and it looks like at this moment in time, Enzo Maresca is having none of it. He's come out in his press conference today and says, "I spoke to Raheem one-on-one. I told him I had to be straight. This is the situation." And he says if he wants to come and talk to me again, I will reiterate the situation. So basically, it looks like Chelsea are not moving, and Raheem Sterling doesn't look like he might have a future at Chelsea. Speaking of a player that might not have a future at their club, not because of those reasons, but because he is going to be moving on. Palace, of course, high-profile centre-back moving this summer. Mark Guehi's been linked with every club around England, whether he wants to go. But Newcastle are the team that have made their formal appearance. They've made 4 bids, all rejected, of course. But we will see if that will change in the coming weeks. But it's the other centre-back, one of the other centre-backs for Crystal Palace they might have to worry about now, because Fulham are set to sign Crystal Palace centre-back Joachim Andersen for around £30 million. The Cottagers have pursued Andersen throughout the summer transfer window and had an initial bid rejected as Palace sought a fee close to £40 million. However, a deal has now been agreed and the Denmark defender will have a medical today. He is currently completing that medical before completing a return to the club he played for on loan in the 2021 season. The 28-year-old made 112 appearances for Crystal Palace since joining from Lyon in the summer of 2021. There's also been interest in Anderson's centre-back partner Mark Guehi, as I said, from Newcastle. But Chairman Steve Parish said it would be unlikely the Eagles would let both players leave. So this could be huge in terms of that deal, because it looks like Steve Parish doesn't want both players to go, but if the right money's there for both, I don't think there really is much Crystal Palace can do, because if they want to cash in on Mark Guehi, they need to do that this summer, because you're not going to get this similar amount of money of 60 to 70 million for a player with 1 year left on his contract next summer, so they might have to cash in on them this summer, but it all depends what Palace feel. And if this Joachim Andersen deal goes through, which the deal's been agreed, and he is completing his medical, so it's almost a formality at this point, it looks unlikely that Mark Guehi might be going as well. If it does, that would mean that two of Palace's 3 starting centre-backs from the weekend game, the defeat away at Brentford, would be no longer at the club 3 days later. That could be a possibility, depending on what happens, but it looks unlikely Mark Guehi will be moving on, but we will see. Stranger things have happened in the Premier League and in the transfer windows, and we will await to find out what happens there. Well, one man in the middle there. A lot of Chelsea players feeling disgruntled and unhappy with the situation about the big squads. Well, this man, Aaron Ramsdale, who signed for Arsenal for £50 million a few summers ago from Sheffield United, well, it doesn't look like he's going to be continuing at Arsenal. It looks like Mikel Arteta has said that he's not going to be a first teamer. David Raya has joined on a permanent deal this summer, and that has kind of pushed Aaron Ramsdale out of the door as a second choice, but he doesn't want to be a second choice, clearly, and one club that's in for him, that want him to be their first choice, is Wolves. They have made an offer to sign Arsenal goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale on a season-long loan deal. The bid, which was submitted on Monday, includes an option to make the permanent move permanent in 2025, so it will be a loan with an obligation to buy in 2025. Ramsdale lost his Arsenal place in 2023, as I said, following the arrival of David Raya on loan from Brentford, and since then the Spaniard has signed on a permanent basis. Despite making just 11 appearances last season, Ramsdale still made England's Euro 2024 squad, but after joining the Gunners from Sheffield United in 2021 and having 2 years to run on his deal, he wants to play first team football. Ramsdale was an unused substitute as Arsenal opened their Premier League campaign with a 2-0 win against Wolves on Saturday, and Jose Sa has been first choice at Molineux since joining in 2021. So there could be movement there. We will wait and see. Wolves have made that offer, and we'll see what Arsenal will have to say on that. A season-long loan with an obligation to buy in 2025. So a season-long loan, and then he will join the club permanently next summer. That is seemingly what could be the case there, but we'll wait on a development. One other transfer detail to tell you about, of a couple of other little lines to tell you, but this is a big story. That man on the right hand side of your screen, Ilkay Gundogan, remember? a big part of Manchester City's squad a few seasons ago, joined Barcelona. Well, it doesn't look like that's going to last very much longer. Manchester City are working on a deal that could bring midfielder Ilkay Gundogan back to the club. The 33-year-old left City for Barcelona in 2023 at a free transfer when his contract expired after captaining Pep Guardiola's side to their historic treble. However, the Catalan Giants' well-publicised financial issues have prevented them from registering new signing Dani Olmo and releasing one of their high earners, which smoothed that process. City are wrestling with the early personnel issues that could include the £81 million departure of Argentina forward Julian Alvarez, of course, and an injury to Oscar Bob that could keep him out for months. But Gundogan could provide a short-term answer to these problems and not require a settling in period. However, of course, it's interesting. Pep Guardiola did not want Ilkay Gundogan to leave City last year, but the club were unwilling to offer the German midfielder the contract length he wanted, of course. So there was a bit of disgruntlement between the club and the player, not the manager and the player, so that's not an issue. But the club looking to get him back. Maybe they've realised that they were in the wrong. He joined City from Borussia Dortmund for a reported £20 million in 2016. He made over 300 appearances for City, scored 60 goals, and he won 14 trophies during his 7 years at the club, which is an incredible feat. 5 Premier Leagues, 1 Champions League, 2 FA Cups, 4 Carabao Cups, and 2 Community Shields. So, we will see if Ilkay Gundogan makes his return to Manchester to play with Manchester City once again. 33 years old, but not too old to still be doing the job at the top level. Incredible. And we'll see what develops in that one. Lots to really burst your way through. Big stories. Of course, Man City only made one signing this summer. This could be another one. Wolves and that loan bid for Aaron Ramsdale. Could that be a development for Ramsdale? Wolves looking to improve themselves in the future, but really struggling at this moment in time. Fulham looking to sign Joachim Andersen from Palace. Palace have a lot of players after impressing in the final 7 games of last season under the new manager. Seemingly their players are getting pipped up from everywhere. At the moment, Elise is gone. Guehi targeted at a big fee from Newcastle. Fulham now looking for Joachim Andersen and other players as well in and amongst that mix. And then, of course, João Felix joining to Chelsea from Atletico Madrid. Still, I don't know where Chelsea are going to fit him into the squad or where they're going to fit half of their players in the squad, but that is for Enzo Maresca and Chelsea to worry about, not me at this moment in time. Other bits of details to tell you about Emi Martinez this afternoon, because I was preparing this show a few hours ago. Lots of new breaking news stories are coming through, and I've just to keep an eye on it because anything could happen in the next few moments. That could be massively important. Emi Martinez, as I said, the Aston Villa goalkeeper, the, of course, World Cup winner with Argentina, has signed a new contract with Villa until 2029. So we'll be there for at least another 5 years, according to his contract, which is good news for Aston Villa, because you certainly don't want to lose a goalkeeper of that quality and that ilk when you're trying to build a side competing this season in the Champions League. So that would be interesting. And also Liverpool, some few bits of details on Liverpool. Of course, haven't made any signings this summer, Arne Slot or Liverpool, but have made a few sales. Of course, Fabio Carvalho made his debut for Brentford at the weekend in their 2-1 win over Palace. He could be returning, could play in a return to Anfield this Sunday. But of course, Liverpool again focusing on sales. And Brentford involved in this one as well. £20 million plus a £5 million add-on for Sepp van den Berg, the young centre-back at Liverpool. The green light to both Brentford and Bayer Leverkusen, unable to decide between the two clubs after speaking with both managers, either Xabi Alonso or Thomas Frank. So Sepp van den Berg for Liverpool could be making that move. 25 million combined fee, which is incredible for two players that were on loan last season, weren't playing first team football for Liverpool, to get almost around just over £50 million in total packages for both players. It is quite remarkable. In terms of sales, if their sporting director could get enough the good deals buying players, than he does selling players. It could be in a very good position, Liverpool, but he's selling quite a number of them at this moment in time. Another line to bring you on Liverpool about signing a player, Georgi Marmadashvili, the goalkeeper, the Georgian goalkeeper. That deal is close to being done for 2025, of course. Of course, this was the initial deal. The negotiations are at the final stages for the keeper to sign for Liverpool from Valencia and would for now and join Liverpool next year. It looks like he'll be loaned back out to Valencia for this season and will join Liverpool permanently from next season. Alisson will continue to be the Liverpool goalkeeper this season, and then, as I said, Marmadashvili will join it next summer in that agreement. The agreement between the club and the player, Liverpool and the player, is done. They're in advanced talks with Valencia, and all that detail will be released shortly. Initially, it was revealed that Bournemouth would be interested in a loan deal there, but that is now off because they have other plans for their keepers. So it looks like Marmadashvili is close for Liverpool, but not quite done yet. He will join Liverpool permanently from 2025, but for this season would be sent back out on loan to Valencia for the remainder of the campaign. Right, that's the transfer latest. Any more details if the show is going on, while the show is going on, we'll certainly keep you up to date with that. But so far, nothing breaking to tell you at this moment in time. We will keep an eye on it because it's been busy all day. New contracts, interesting players. Actually, we do have a bit of breaking news to tell you. A young player from Manchester United, Facundo Pellistri, if you remember him, the winger, has joined Panathinaikos for a £5.1 million fee, 1.7 million in possible add-ons, 3-year buyback option, and a 45% sell-on fee. Great deal for Manchester United, with around £7 million complete deal there for Facundo Pellistri to join Panathinaikos. I don't think Man United fans will be happy with that because he looks to be a really good young player, but they will have a 3-year buyback option on that. Right, moving on to the PFA Team of the Year then. The PFA released their last season's awards in the last day or two, and this is the 11 that they have gone for. Now, the positions on the left-hand side of the player names aren't significant. There are a couple of positions where I'm like, that's not the position those players play, but that's not the big deal out of the situation. They had to fit them in, and they did fit them in. Of course, the top 2 of last season making up the majority of the players. 9 of the 11, if I'm correct at counting, yes, 9 of the 11 are from either Arsenal or from Manchester City, last season's top 2, and then 1 Liverpool and 1 Aston Villa player makes it in there. Let's talk about this PFA Team of the Year then. Interesting, David Raya, clearly one of the best goalkeepers of last season, got the Golden Glove in the Premier League and deservedly was the goalkeeper of last year. Kyle Walker at right back is an interesting one. I think that's probably deserved in a sense, because last season right back was a troubled one because a lot of teams were going for that inverted fullback, and sometimes it didn't work, sometimes it did, and I think Kyle Walker was consistently the best at that in a sense. In terms of centre backs, there's 3 centre backs here. One of them's edged out to left back, which I find a bit interesting. That Saliba is edged out at left back, but he is of course a centre back. Virgil van Dijk and Gabriel, they definitely were trying to squeeze in one of either Van Dijk or Gabriel, and just had to go for that system. But Saliba, Van Dijk and Gabriel are the other 3 defenders, all deserved. Van Dijk probably one of Liverpool's best players last season, and he had made one of a great impact for Liverpool, of course, their captain, of course. And then the Arsenal centre-backs, deservedly, they're the best defence in the league, the only team to concede less than 30 goals last season. Saliba and Gabriel 100% go in there, that great partnership. In terms of midfield, again, not a surprise of those 3 players in there. Declan Rice, who made an absolute breakout season at Arsenal last season, joining, and that big fee from West Ham last summer. Had a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but did very, very well in that first season. Martin Odegaard, of course, the Arsenal captain, almost led them to that title, but are they getting closer? And Odegaard, certainly a leader in that factor. And then, of course, Rodri, the best centre defensive midfielder in the Premier League at this moment in time, in the world at this moment in time. No doubt that he would be in that midfield whatsoever. Then left winger, they've gone for Phil Foden, which to me there was no question, although he doesn't naturally play left, but they've gone for this system. It's not the system that matters, it's the players. Phil Foden 100% had to be in there. Player of the Year last year in the Premier League. Got that from the Premier League, that award. I will tell you that he also got the PFA Player of the Year award as well, deservedly so. Erling Haaland also getting in the team. Of course, another great season at Manchester City. An incredible career he's already had at Manchester City, and it looks to be continuing in great vein. And he's in the squad. And Ollie Watkins was absolutely sensational for Aston Villa last year. A massive player in them getting into the Champions League positions for an Aston Villa side who were in relegation when Unai Emery took over a season and a half earlier, and absolutely transformed them, brought them from relegation battling under Steven Gerrard to Champions League qualifying Aston Villa. And Ollie Watkins, a major player in that, and incredible to see him in the PFA Team of the Year. There could have been another few. I mean, Cole Palmer probably should have deserved to be in there. Certainly one of them that stands out to you that's not in there that should have been, but he did get Young Player of the Year, did Cole Palmer. So Phil Foden Player of the Year, Cole Palmer Young Player of the Year, and that is the PFA Team of the Year, the 11 that the PFA believe are the best. Of course, the Professional Footballers Association, and there you go. That is the PFA. I didn't want to spend too much time on that because we've got the Premier League weekend to get to, and this is the best part of the show. 10 Premier League games to get us off. The Premier League started at the weekend. We watched on Friday night Manchester United take on Fulham in the new season opener. It wasn't the best in terms of goals and action, but it did have a bit of late drama. We'll get to that in a moment. Also at the weekend, Arne Slot at Liverpool got his campaign underway with a 12:30 kickoff, something that Jurgen Klopp really despised in his previous seasons at Liverpool, and it was only fitting that the new manager got a 12:30 kickoff to start the season away at newly promoted Ipswich, who were away for 22 years since they were last in the Premier League, and their last game was away to Liverpool in a 5-0 defeat back in 2002. They got their campaign underway on Saturday lunchtime. Arsenal, last season's runners-up, they hosted Wolves. Brighton headed to Everton, and Everton's first game of their final season at Goodison Park, because their new stadium set to open from next campaign. So Everton one final season at Goodison Park, and that opened with a game against Brighton under their new manager Fabian Hertzler. Newcastle got their campaign off against a newly promoted side as they took on Southampton at St James's Park. Eddie Howe under a bit of pressure in terms of what can he do for Newcastle, where can he bring them. Got them to the Champions League qualification 2 seasons ago. Can he follow that up with another push for Champions League? Can Southampton stay up under Russell Martin, who's done a wonderful job to get them there? We watched them on Saturday. Also Nottingham Forest Bournemouth, two sides with interesting dynamics at the moment. Andoni Iraola did a great job with Bournemouth last season. Nottingham Forest under Nuno Espirito Santo, can he continue keeping Forest in the division? We'll see them. West Ham and Villa, what a matchup, the Battle of the Claret and Blue at the London Stadium at the weekend as well. A close fight between Brentford and Palace in a London derby at the G-Tech. On Sunday afternoon we also watched the champions Man City head to Chelsea, and on Monday night Leicester, newly promoted Leicester, welcomed Tottenham to the King Power Stadium. So those were our 10 matchups for the first Premier League week of the season, and we start way back on Friday night with the results. If you haven't seen the results, we're going to give you spoilers because you know, what can you do? There's nothing you can really do about that. Let's see. Friday night then. We'll start with the game that we watched here on LFS. These are the results from the weekends. Manchester United taking on Fulham. They won by 1-0 Manchester United. Not the most convincing result from Erik ten Hag's side on the Friday night football. The new season opener, Friday night under the lights at Old Trafford. Looking for a new regime, looking for that new excitement with under Erik ten Hag. A few new signings. To be honest, it was a bit of a dull fest at times. I don't want to be horrible. I don't want to be angry. It was a bit of a dull fest, in a sense, and I don't think we expected anything other than that. Manchester United, who conceded a hat full of goals last season, and couldn't score goals majority of the time, and then a Fulham side who really haven't done very much great business over the summer and not expected to do very well. I thought it was an awful decision from the Premier League to have this as their opening fixture of the new season. What does this show? Two sides that are really in limbo at the moment, not really doing great, not at their peak, not really at their best, and they want to improve themselves? Is that really a storyline you want to go with? Usually you get a newly promoted side on the opening night of the season and you get that newly promoted excitement, but a bit of a dull fest, and the scoreline showed that. Ultimately, that's not Fulham's fault. They went to Old Trafford, they wanted to defend, and I think they impressed in that first half massively, and in the second half as well. They slowed Manchester United down. They didn't allow them to break through. Yes, Man United had a couple of good chances, but in terms of their overall performance, Fulham, I think they were strong defensively. I think they were solid halfway through. I don't think they were exposed many times, and I think when United got dominant on the ball, when they had more possession, I think they struggled more with it. When they had more control and more possession, and kind of it was up to them to make things happen, I think it was that pressure. They didn't deal with it that well. They struggled in that sense, and I think that's why it was such a close game in the end. They struggled to break Fulham down, essentially, and they looked lacking ideas, which is interesting in that sense. Of course, we have to caveat all this by the fact that the player's not up to full fitness, full sharpness, all of that. That goes without saying. It's the opening weekend of the season. But I was expecting a bit more from both sides, really. From a Manchester United point of view, I was expecting a bit more in terms of that really fluid attacking quality. But then again, we didn't see much of it last season. What has changed? Very little. One thing that has changed is they have a new super sub. It seems Scott McTominay was that super sub that came off the bench and scored multiple big goals for United last season. Looks like the new signing Joshua Zirkzee could be making that known for his new position at United. He came off the bench and grabbed the ultimate winner. Really nice finish. And giving Man United the 1-0 lead within the final few minutes of the game. It was really late in the game, in the 86th minute, if memory serves me correct, that he scored the winner. But as I said, not convincing from United, but then again, what they'll say is, it's 1-0, they won the game, and they started with a win. 3 points is 3 points at the end of the day, and it's still early in the season. They're not up to full sharpness. By whichever means you can get the win, get the win. They did it last season at home to Wolves, where they scraped out with a 1-0 victory against Wolves. Not a convincing season, but they got the win, they got the result, and that's what they needed out of it. And I think they did, ultimately, I don't think they deserved it, but at the end of the day, and that is what happens. I think Fulham did deserve a point out of the way they played, but that is the ruthless and horrible nature of the Premier League sometimes. Starting with Liverpool then on the Saturday lunchtime then, so Man United got off to a winning start. They were top of the table, at least for quite a number of hours, from Friday night to Saturday afternoon, because Liverpool pipped them to the post at lunchtime. Their new manager, Arne Slot, got his new era, in a sense, off with a victory at newly promoted Ipswich on Saturday afternoon. Ipswich, of course, under Caoimhan McKenna, back-to-back promotions back in the Premier League for the first time in 22 years. And as I said, their last game in the Premier League back in 2002 was away to Liverpool. They now opened their campaign with a home game against the new regime Reds. Liverpool struggled in that first half, I'd have to say. I watched the game, and ultimately that man-to-man marking system that Caoimhan McKenna and Ipswich kind of employed in that first half, where Liverpool really couldn't get a few yards of space to kind of play the football they wanted. They were really pressing quite intensely. Ipswich in that first half really struggled Liverpool to kind of break out of that press and try and get their main players on the ball. I don't think the fact that Liverpool were sloppy on the ball in that first half helped, because if they were going to get through that man-to-man marking system, they needed to be sharp, they needed to be quick, they needed to be one-touch passing in between the lines to break that press and find the runners beyond. They couldn't do that very much in the first half, so they struggled. Arne Slot then, in the post-match press conference, put it down to not winning enough duels, but at half-time we saw a substitution, which a lot of people actually thought was really smart from the manager, really decisive, when others would have said, just persevere with it, we'll figure it out. He made a decisive decision at half-time, switch out the centre-backs, give someone with a bit more physical presence. No offence to Gerald Kwanzaa, but Ibu Konate had a bit more of that. He's got that aura about him, that physical presence where he's going to get up and he's going to win those tiring headers. And that half-time substitution really changed the game. Ultimately, Liverpool were quicker in their passing. They had runners in behind. I think Salah was the main target. It looked like Liverpool just wanted to get the ball to Salah at any point, at any kind of attacking moment. And the first goal, really beautiful. We see the best of what Liverpool can offer with their two best players on the ball, Mo Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Alexander-Arnold with a lovely ball feinted in behind. Salah made the run around the defender. Salah got into the box, squared it across, and Jota scored to give Liverpool the 1-0 lead. But we've seen a very different side to Liverpool in that, from the first half to the second half, in a sense where Ipswich were pressing really high. They kind of swarmed Liverpool, closed them down. That man-to-man marking, as I said, Liverpool adapted at half-time, started winning their battles, started winning their duels, which actually helped them in that man-to-man, because if you're not winning your duels, the opposition are just going to win the possession every single time if they're man-to-man. I mean, it's basics. So they started winning more duels, they started winning more battles, they were commanding in the game, Liverpool, in the second half. They started to get on the ball a bit more, pass it a bit quicker. Their passing was much more sharp, much more crisp, much more kind of precise in between the lines, whereas a bit loose in the first half. They'd given away a few sloppy balls. It improved in the second half. They made those changes, and they certainly got the benefit of that. They probably could have had 4 or 5, Liverpool, being honest, with the chances they created. Salah and Trent were on fire in that second half. As I mentioned, they were combining massively. Salah got an assist and a goal. On opening day, he broke another Premier League record, the most goals in opening day games in Premier League history. 9 goals ahead of now Frank Lampard, Wayne Rooney and Alan Shearer, who all scored 8 on the opening day. In previous seasons, Salah on 9. Liverpool also created 6 big chances, in a sense, which is the most from any team on the opening weekend, which is another impressive sense that of how quickly it changed from Liverpool having no shots on target in the first half to then creating the most big chances and the most opportunities of any team in the opening weekend. It's quite a big, significant swing between first half to second half. Again, caveat with the fact that Ipswich, newly promoted side, all that goes without saying. Liverpool expected to win, but the 2 goals, very good goals and a lot of good chances. But from an Ipswich point of view, I'd say 2-0. Some would say flattered them, but in a sense, that first half they probably deserved to not be battered and beaten down and destroyed 4 or 5-0 in the end, because they fought really hard, they worked really hard, they gave everything in the game, and if they'd have gone 4 or 5-0 down, it would have been a really disheartening moment for them. But I think they can take 2-0 and go, look, Liverpool the better side. They created really good chances. They scored 2 goals. We really didn't create much in that sense. Ipswich really didn't create much in that sense either half, really. They had 1 or 2 good chances. They had a really good chance that should have been scored at 0-0. That could have changed the game. But I think Ipswich can take positives from that one and going into an easier game. No, away to Manchester City, it doesn't get any easier. For Ipswich next, they can take a few positives from that performance at home to Liverpool on the opening day. Another side that can take a lot of positives is a winning side in Arsenal, who started their campaign off with a win, a 2-0 comfortable home win against Wolves on the opening day. They got off to a good start. Arsenal, but in a different sense. They weren't the most convincing. They weren't kind of crisp, confident, or kind of what we say from Arsenal, dominant, controlling, kind of suffocating a team that we've seen from Arsenal in previous seasons. Again, it's the opening day. Sides aren't up to their best. They're not at their peak levels yet. They won't be for at least another couple of weeks. But there were a lot of really good positive signs from Arsenal. And one thing I really picked up upon, I didn't watch the full 90 minutes, I didn't watch the whole game, but from bits and pieces that I did see in the main extended highlights, was the fact that Arsenal weren't controlling the ball as much. In previous seasons, we would have seen them having, last season, we would have seen them having 60-70% possession, controlling the ball more, slower in their movements in times, and more kind of precise and kind of, what's the word? I'm trying to think, like, kind of, I can't think of the word, but what I mean is they're not as instinctive previously, where it was more calculated. That's the word I'm looking for. Calculated attacks where they're kind of passing it around, more Manchester City like, where they're waiting for the opposition, waiting for that little moment where they can play that precise little pass, that calculated little moment where they can find the goal and score. It looked to be more instinctive, more fast, more pacey, more quick, kind of in that sense. With Arsenal, what we've kind of seen in their previous season, not last season, the previous season before that, where we saw Arsenal going gung-ho in attack, maybe losing a bit defensively, but gung-ho in attack and really kind of blasting their way through a side with that raw pace that they have. I think we saw more of that against Wolves. And you could tell from the possession stats, just over 50% possession for Arsenal, which is uncommon considering last season. But I think it was interesting to see. And I think certainly Mikel Arteta wants last season and the season before combined to make a perfect season. Really pacey and quick in attack, but also really solid, really strong, really rigid defensively, and that's the perfect quality. It looks like they're getting there. You can see it from the way they're playing. It's just a few tweaking things that they can certainly improve on, but a very good game. Wolves ultimately were competitive in the game. I don't think Arsenal were kind of running riot in a sense throughout the game, but again, not enough attacking output from Wolves to really get them back into the game, giving that one chance, giving them a goal to get back, to really kind of make Arsenal nervous. They got one, they got two, and they were cruising from that point, Arsenal. And Wolves were competitive, but not enough to really test such an incredible Arsenal defence. And a simple 2-0 victory for the Gunners on the opening weekend. So, 3 teams winning and keeping clean sheets on the opening weekend, all playing in red. But it was a battle of 2 teams that normally play in blue at Goodison Park on Saturday afternoon, as Everton started their final season at Goodison. Of course, their new stadium opening next season, and they started off with an awful result at home to new Brighton. Brighton under a new manager in Fabian Hertzler, and it looked like that new manager bounce seems to be working for Brighton on the opening day. Not a good start to the final season at Goodison for Everton whatsoever. 3-0 defeat, and also down to 10 in the game as well. They started well, to be honest, Everton. They started with a better side. I think Dwight McNeil hit the post, the inside of the post. They had a couple of good chances as well, other than that, but they missed them. The lack of clinical edge from Everton surely left them ruining those early chances, because they ended up absolutely being destroyed on the day. Brighton were able to capitalise on sloppy Everton passing, sloppy Everton possession. They were giving the balls away cheaply, Everton. They were coming out with the ball and trying to make a little cute pass across the back four, and they're getting caught out time and time again. It was basic stuff that I'm sure Sean Dyche will be very annoyed at. I didn't like what he said after the game, but we'll get to that in a moment. Everton really struggled to kind of finish their chances, and Brighton did capitalise. Caoimhan scored the first goal. A really fabulously worked move from back to front. An incredible run. Caoimhan run over 100 yards. He started the move and finished the move. 100 yards running, and he got the ball from the young Yankuba Minte from the right hand side. Nice ball across the box. It's what you see from a really well carved out goal. It's just nice ball across the box, and the players at the back post ready to finish, and Caoimhan scored the goal. Give them a lead, although albeit at half time it was only 1-0 to Brighton, but things certainly changed in the second half. Everton were then given a penalty by the referee on the field. That was checked by VAR, ruled out for it not being a penalty, which I agree. VAR got the right decision there. I'll get to Sean Dyche's comments on that in a moment. But it looked like Dominic Calvert-Lewin went down. He collided with the Brighton defender, who was Lewis Dunk. Lewis Dunk claiming his innocence, and rightfully so. Dominic Calvert-Lewin stood on him, not the other way about, so the penalty was ruled out by VAR. Shortly after, Danny Welbeck made it 2-0 to Brighton, because another terrible Everton mistake. Really poor play, and Weaver played it to Welbeck, and Welbeck, nice finish with that one to make it 2. Ashley Young then was sent off for a last man challenge. Again, you can't really argue with it. I mean, he literally pulls Caoimhan to the ground as a last man. There's no arguing the red card. And then from that point, Brighton had full control of the game. Made it 3. They also made it 4, but that was ruled out for offside against Yasin Ayari. Samuel Adingra made it 3. Confirmed the result for Brighton. But one thing that really irritated me about the game was Sean Dyche's comments afterwards, blaming the referee, blaming refereeing decisions for ultimately Everton's defeat. I think that's cowardly. I think that's bizarre that a manager of Sean Dyche's kind of stature in the Premier League, he's a really good manager, a really good coach, that we've seen over the last few years do create miracles at football clubs. I mean, what he did at Burnley was an absolute sensation. But to come out on the opening weekend when your side has been thoroughly beaten by a much better side, and your side made nothing but mistakes all afternoon, to blame it on the referee and his decision making and VAR is quite cowardly. At the end of the day, I think it was stupid at times. He said there was penalty decisions not given their way. I think the penalty that was ruled out was correct. I don't think there was an issue with that. And if he looks at it and sees it from an objective point of view, he will see that. But of course, with his Everton hat on, he doesn't want to say that with the media. Blame the referee, easy cop out. Blame the man who usually gets blamed every week. I think the referee had a really good game, Simon Hooper, and I think he made some very good decisions. Yes, he gave a penalty that was ultimately not a penalty. That happens, but VAR is there as a safety net to make sure that that decision was overturned in the end. It was, correctly so. The red card was not a mistake, not a bad decision. Caoimhan had a chance to run through one-on-one with the keeper. Ashley Young pulls him down, grabs his arm, drags him back. He goes down. It's a professional last man foul. There's no doubt about it. It's a red card. So Sean Dyche getting angry at refereeing decisions when his players made mistakes all afternoon is bizarre, ridiculous. Everton didn't deserve to win that game. They missed some really good early chances, and Brighton took their chances. It's as simple as that. You can't blame the referee, but whatever. Brighton come out with a victory. Everton, sour as ever, and Sean Dyche making some very stupid and idiotic comments for his side's defeat. But it's something that we see from managers all the time. They go to great lengths to be called whatever to make sure that their players are protected. But at the end of the day, there really is no protecting the Everton players after that performance. Really shocking and a very disappointing result for the Merseyside Blues. Right, moving on to another game at 3 o'clock on Sunday that had a red card on Saturday. That had a red card in it. This time going in favour of the home side, who did get a red card, but ended up coming out with a victory in Newcastle against Southampton. Two sides at opposite sides of the country, and after the opening weekend will be opposite sides of the table as well, as Newcastle came out with a 1-0 victory in the end, the only goal coming from Joe Linton in the game. A red card from Fabian Schär for violent conduct. I mean, he headbutted a player, there was no doubt about that. A straight red card for Fabian Schär, and Joe Linton went on to score the ultimate winner in the 45th minute when the great Alex McCarthy, who's well beyond his years and well beyond quality for the Premier League, played the ball out from the back, gave it straight to a Newcastle player, and Joe Linton finished. Terrible defending from Southampton, basic, naive, schoolboy, kindergarten defending, and kindergarten playing out from the back. Shocking, and Russell Martin, I'm sure, will look at that. And Newcastle coming out with the victory on that occasion. I think it wasn't the best quality of a game. Newcastle will know that. They'll know that they got away with one. They got the 1-0 victory. They got out with a victory after going down to 10 men. But a tough slog. And we've seen Newcastle do that previously, where they've battled games, they've fought games to the very death, and got the desired result out of it. They got 3 points, and with playing with 10 men is a huge benefit. Albeit against a newly promoted side, a side that you should be beating. And I think Newcastle will say, we got lucky there. But again, it came from a Southampton mistake, and Southampton could have got something from that game because Newcastle weren't at their form, but a mistake of their own really didn't help them in that one. That's why they lose, but they lose on one mistake. I think if Southampton hadn't made that mistake, Newcastle wouldn't have scored. I don't think Newcastle looked like they were going to score in the game. They really struggled, really just weren't up to speed in the game. I mean, we compare everything in terms of stats in that one, and look, we'll try and balance it out with first half rather than second half, because second half they played the whole half with 10, and of course Southampton were going to get the benefit. But the first half stats, Southampton had over 70% possession, 4 shots, which is really poor, to Newcastle's 3 shots. So basically, both sides had really struggled to get anywhere near the opposition's goal. There was 1 shot on target, which was ultimately the goal. So other than the goal, Newcastle didn't have a shot on target other than the goal in the whole afternoon. The second half, very different story, obviously. Southampton with only 80% possession, more than 15 shots. Newcastle didn't have a shot. So if Southampton hadn't made that mistake, I mean, it's easy to say, but if Southampton hadn't made that mistake at the back, they probably could have got something out of that game. But again, simple mistakes. It's something they'll learn from. Newly promoted side is something they will certainly learn from, as I said. in the coming weeks to try and stay in the division. One side who has been picked by a few people to be in a relegation battle this season, not the away side in this one, but the home side, Nottingham Forest, taking on Bournemouth on Saturday 3 o'clock. Was another close competitive match, but in the end, a draw was probably the fair result ultimately between the two sides. Again, not a game with great quality, massive quality, or two sides that really kind of were writing headlines in their games. Chris Wood opened the scoring for Nottingham Forest before, of course, Antoine Semenyo rescued a draw out of it for Bournemouth in the end. Again, not a great quality game. Two sides that could have won the game. Bournemouth did have late chances to win it. Nottingham Forest probably should have made it 2-0 with a few good chances, but ultimately a draw, probably a fair result. Two sides with a lot more to show this season in terms of their quality. But again, Nottingham Forest, I just don't see what they've got. I had them predicted to go down and the first game of the season probably proves that to me. I don't think they have that quality. A side that would have stayed up, would stay up, I think would have held on for the 1-0 win there. They wouldn't have given away that ball. They would have done defensively better. It wasn't the cleanest of goals for Antoine Semenyo to get that equaliser, and that's why it was a scrappy goal to give away so late in a game. Forest will be frustrated with themselves that they did give away that goal, that they did kind of end up getting only a draw instead of 3 points. But of course, we'll see what comes of Forest this season, but I'm not convinced at all. Bournemouth, on the other hand, I said they'd have a decent season. A draw away at Forest isn't the worst result in the world, considering they could have lost, but they also could have won the game as well, so it's kind of a fair result in the end. Saturday evening kick-off then, we move on to next as West Ham took on Aston Villa at the London Stadium. West Ham under new manager Julian Lopetegui after David Moyes' departure at the end of last season. Aston Villa quite a distance into their new regime under Unai Emery, what's gone full of roses so far, no thorns in that regime so far, but it's Julian Lopetegui's start that ends with a defeat for the Hammers, their opening game of the new season. Saw them lose to their claret and blue rivals in the league, Aston Villa. Again, another close game. There was quite a few close matchups in this opening weekend, and that's why some of the results were tough to call. But in my predictions that I did predict Aston Villa to win, based on the fact that I thought Villa had better quality in the final third. And again, I was proven right. They do. West Ham looked good in moments. They did. I don't think they would have scored in the day if it wasn't for the penalty, of course, that got them their only goal. Lucas Paquetá with the penalty. I'm not convinced on the penalty decision, but the referee gives it. I don't think there's a reason to overturn it if it's the referee's opinion. I have no problem with the referee giving it. It's his opinion. He sees it. It's not a clear and obvious error in my opinion. There's not a big deal. In terms of Aston Villa and their goals, of course, Amadou Onana gave them the lead, that new signing from Everton, and then the young man John Duran, who was linked to a move to West Ham. I mean, you couldn't write this. Linked to a move to West Ham and done the Hammers sign. Had to apologise for that because Villa said, hold on a minute, the deal hasn't been agreed, and he ends up scoring the winner for Aston Villa against West Ham in the opening weekend of the season. It looks like John Duran is going nowhere on his celebration in terms of that for the winning goal for Villa. Ultimately, again, a close battle, but Villa were better at finishing on the day. They took their chances. One positive to take out of the game for West Ham from their point of view, Mohamed Kudus, very impressive, as he has been since joining West Ham. But that is something they can massively take a lot of quality from. Mohamed Kudus, probably the brightest spark of the day for West Ham, getting forward down that left flank, causing Matty Cash incredible amounts of issues down that left channel. And I think he will be a massive part to play if West Ham can push for Europe, which I think is realistic. I do think West Ham can push for Europe. I think they could be in that mix. There was midfield quality from both teams. They've got strong midfields, of course, and we'll see what comes in this season. I think Villa will be just that echelon above West Ham in terms of, I think they'll be battling for kind of Europa League places, 5th, 6th, maybe could push for Champions League if they click it at the right time. I think West Ham are just hoping to push for any European place. That is where West Ham are at this moment in time, which they've been doing for previous seasons. To a London derby that started our Sunday action as Brentford won 2-1 at home to Crystal Palace. Again, a result that I didn't see going this way, but it's true Brentford that we don't know what we get from them. And Thomas Frank's side, we do know what he wants to get from them, but of course there's been a few other details, including Brentford, over the last few weeks, other than their football. Again, they were better in the final third than Palace. Palace had a good few chances, but they couldn't finish them. Brentford were much sharper, much more in control of the game, I think, and that home crowd, we've seen it before for Brentford on opening days, where it has been a bit more impactful for them. Their first Premier League game at home in a new season was against Arsenal when they were first promoted. They won that. They then had Spurs last season. They drew 2-2 in that. They were very kind of animated and excited on the opening day there. And then, of course, against Palace, another really big result for them. Brandon Burmo gave them the lead. Ethan Pinnock then levelled for Palace. That own goal for Johan Vissa scored the winner for Brentford. A really good result for Brentford, who a lot of people have in limbo this season. Don't know whether they'll be pushing for the top half or whether they'll be maybe in a relegation battle. I don't think they're going to be in a relegation battle. I think they're too good for that. I think they've got too good of quality of players, but you never know. They could be dragged in there. But one key point to make out of this game for Brentford, they had no Ivan Toney in the squad. He was not involved. Of course, he's been linked to moves elsewhere, but he was not there. And that is interesting. Very, very significant, because Ivan Toney's been kind of the talisman for Brentford. He got them out of the mire. He's got them to the Premier League. He's kind of going to be their star man. Last season or two, it's been more others, the likes of Brandon Burmo, Johan Vissa, as I mentioned, other players in the squad. Ivan Toney, I wouldn't say he's iced out, because I wouldn't put it past him from being on the bench or even starting at the weekend away at Liverpool. So there's no, at the moment, there's nothing to really say at that. But it was interesting that Brentford know they can get results against good opposition in Crystal Palace, very good side, good results against good opposition without Ivan Toney being in the team. Fascinating. Palace, I did say in the title of the stream, big wins and some disappointments. Palace were my some disappointments. Very kind of lackluster from Palace to start the season. Yes, they've lost some big players, and yes, they might lose other big players, as I mentioned previously. But again, they've got good quality. Oliver Glasner did an incredible job at the end of last season. Not that I'm expecting Palace to win every game this season, but I expected a bit more from them in this one. A very winnable game for Palace, but ultimately weren't at the level, and Brentford just got the better of them. And as I said, they could lose two of their starting back three from that game, in Mark Guehi and Joachim Andersen. Andersen currently doing his medical. Guehi heavily linked to a move to Newcastle after 4 bids, but of course Steve Parish said it's unlikely both will go. But unlikely doesn't mean that as a certainty. There is still a hint that could happen. We'll see for Palace what comes of that. But an opening day defeat will be something they'll want to build on, wanting to improve from after that. And then the big headline maker of the opening weekend, two big sides in the Premier League, two big names, two big clubs of previous seasons. Chelsea and Manchester City, the champions, heading to Chelsea once again away from home. Start the season for Manchester City, but again it did not mean to cause them any problems or any worries whatsoever, as the champions showed their quality without even some of their best players. No Rodri in the team for Manchester City, and they cruised their way past Chelsea, ultimately in the end winning by 2-0. Erling Haaland opening the scoring, as he always does. What a shock that Erling Haaland was on the score sheet in the first half before Mateo Kovacic got a good goal to double City's lead. Of course, the former Chelsea player, a good goal against his old club for Mateo Kovacic. But again, proof that City don't have to be at their best to beat anyone in this league. That's the quality, that's the echelons of quality, that's the depth that they have, that they can play in a system under Pep Guardiola where they can beat anyone and still not have the best sets of players on the field. They didn't have their best out there. Well, that's quite disrespectful to the players that played. They didn't have their best starting 11, shall we say, out there, City. They had some very good players, and a lot of those players that started that game will be massive players for them this season. One thing, Phil Foden came off the bench at half-time, which was an issue. I was expecting him to start, but he didn't start, of course being away with England in the summer. But Phil Foden, big player for Manchester City, he came on at half-time, impressed. Of course, the new signing Savinho started that game. He impressed, but had to come off at half-time for that injury, and that's why Foden came on. But again, another impressive performance from Manchester City. We did say previously, what sort of side would Chelsea put out? Well, the side they did put out didn't look like they played with each other very much at all. Yes, they were competitive in the game, Chelsea, and they'd have a number of good chances. I don't think it was enough, though. It certainly wasn't enough, though. Nicholas Jackson was there or thereabouts. Cole Palmer didn't really light up the system at all, and Kunku wasn't the best. Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, I mean, for that second goal for City, I mean, it's shocking defending. I mean, I don't know what you're doing. You're getting spun in midfield. Like, it's just awful. For a man you sold for 30 odd million pounds to be beating two of your big signings in midfield, it's quite an embarrassing moment for Chelsea. And that point, defensively, not the best, but again, more to come from Chelsea. I'm certainly not believing that they will be battling anywhere significant this season. Probably European football for a battle this season once again, but nothing significant for Chelsea. Ultimately, losing on the opening day. And finally then, Monday Night Football, the first Monday night game of the new season, and saw the final of our three newly promoted sides take on Tottenham, as Leicester got back into the Premier League and welcoming Ange Postecoglou Spurs, and Ange who made a bold statement in midweek previously about how he usually wins things at clubs in his second season. Well, who's going to tell him? Because Tottenham haven't won anything in 16 years. Even the best managers in the world could not do that at that club. Jose Mourinho was at Tottenham, and he couldn't even do it. I mean, that's just basic. And they couldn't. Forget about winning trophies. They couldn't even win their opening game. They were in full control in that first half, Tottenham, but they didn't finish enough in the game. They didn't kind of dead the game. They still kept Leicester hanging on, kept them clinging on in there, and kind of kept them in the game and given them a bit of hope at half time. But 1-0 at Tottenham at half time, Leicester and Steve Cooper would have said at half time, big second half, we get something out of this game. Whereas if Tottenham had made it 2 or maybe even 3-0, Leicester would have said, it's tough, it's a mountain to climb. They wouldn't have had that belief and that energy, that kind of extra bit of motivation in the second half to get something. And they actually could have won the game, Leicester, ultimately, but we'll get to that in a moment. First half, it was shocking. Leicester were like mercenaries. It was like a pre-season friend. It was terrible. I mean, Tottenham were all over them, and Leicester just offered nothing. Whether they got their kind of system wrong, but it was basics. They lacked any sort of energy in that first half. But they did improve. They came out with much more energy and much more threatening in the second half. Leicester, they showed a lot more quality in the final third. I thought when they got Jamie Vardy into the game, because he was very isolated in that first half, but when he got into the game, he was making those runs in behind. They were finding them, they were playing those passes. Tottenham really struggled. It got the crowd up when Leicester started to get forward to create chances. And I think Tottenham struggled with that, but also when Leicester did press high and were more intense in their press, I think Tottenham did kind of cower in fear and didn't really kind of show them their quality in response. They kind of stood off and stood back, and that'll be something I'm sure Ange will be very disappointed with. That his side really didn't step up to the mark in that second half. When they were tested, they really just failed, as Tottenham previously have done. Vardy got the equaliser, really good goal, and he also had the best chance to win the game as well with another similar ball in behind. Vardy doing things of old for Leicester, 37 years old, had only joined training in midweek and was told Steve Cooper he was fit enough to play, and he played 65 minutes and almost won Leicester the game single-handedly. Got them a point, and I think Tottenham in the end were lucky to come away with a point. I think Leicester created some very good chances in that second half, and probably if they'd nicked a 2-1 win, no one would really begrudge them at that Leicester, because they came out in the second half and they were much the better side. Tottenham really struggled, really kind of lacked quality in the second half. They lacked the clinical edge in the first half and just lacked overall quality in the second half. And I've wrote down here, it's the definition of a game of two halves. Tottenham were all over Leicester in the first half. Leicester were all over Tottenham in the second. And a draw, probably ultimately a fair result. Tottenham, as I said, got their opener in the first half through Pedro Porro before, as I said, Jamie Vardy equalised for Leicester. And it finished 1-1. So that was our results for the opening weekend. 8 teams winning. almost all of them by clean sheets. 6 of our 8 teams won whilst keeping a clean sheet in the opening weekend. United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Brighton, Newcastle and Manchester City all winning comfortably with clean sheets in the end. Villa scraping a 2-1 win, and Brentford as well 2-1 winners. And the 2 draws, as I said, Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth and Leicester, Tottenham both 1-1 draws. Our big winners of game week 1, Leicester, because I think they got a really good result. The only newly promoted side to get anything are the opening games. Brighton, under a new manager, a new regime, and a tough away game, usually at Goodison Park, looked pretty easy for them in the end. Brentford, I think it was quite shocking how competitive they were against Palace. Like, I'm not ruling Brentford out and thinking they're really poor and awful side, but they were a lot better than what I thought they would be, and I think that's a good result for them on the opening weekend against a good Palace side. The big losers from the opening weekend, whether that be they lacked performance or whether they probably didn't get what they deserved out of the game. I think Tottenham, they were poor considering how comfortable and how in control they were in the first half. Fulham, I think, didn't get what they deserved out of Manchester United. I think they were unlucky. They were close, but no cigar, as they say. They need to be more clinical in their finishing. I think Adama Traore really struggled in that game to finish his dinner, but as we've seen previously, he gives pace, but not very much in terms of finishing. That could be a problem for Fulham this season. I think they got unlucky, and again, Everton just did not show anywhere near enough on the opening weekend, not the start to their final season at Goodison Park that they would have wanted. Those are the big losers, those are the big winners, and those are the results from the first Premier League week of the season. Another week to come another big weekend to come your way this weekend in the Premier League. And let's just quickly run you through the fixtures. And we have live games here in LFS this weekend. We'll get to those in a moment. On Saturday afternoon, Brighton welcome Manchester United to the Amex Stadium. That's lunchtime on Saturday. 5 3 o'clock kickoffs. Crystal Palace host West Ham and another London derby for Palace. Fulham host Leicester. Newly promoted Ipswich have a tough away game away at Manchester City. Southampton take on Nottingham Forest in that one at St Mary's. Tottenham take on Everton, 2 sides getting poor results of their opening weekend fixtures. They head to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A cracker at 5:30 on Saturday evening as Aston Villa at Villa Park take on Arsenal, a side they beat and done the double over last season. Villa, who beat Arsenal and City back-to-back at Villa Park last season by 1-0, and that's 5:30 on Saturday. Villa Arsenal. On Sunday we will have these 2 of these games live on LFS. 2 o'clock on Sunday we will have Bournemouth taking on Newcastle, a Bournemouth side who drew on the opening day, a Newcastle side that have a lot more to prove from their opening day victory. They face each other at the Vitality on the south coast at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Also a 2 o'clock kickoff we'll be keeping an eye on is Wolves taking on Chelsea at the Molineux. 2 sides beaten 2-0 by the 2 title challengers last season. They're on at 2 o'clock. And a 4:30 kickoff as we watch Liverpool take on Brentford, as Liverpool's new regime under Arne Slot got underway with a win away at Ipswich. Their first game at Anfield with the Arne Slot as manager. I was just trying to figure it out. First league game at Anfield for Arne Slot as manager, as he takes on Tottenham, Thomas Frank's Brentford, 4:30 on Sunday. So that is our matchups for this weekend, if I can get my words out. 2 o'clock on Sunday, Bournemouth Newcastle, and 4:30 Liverpool Brentford is our Premier League doubleheader this weekend. Right. Before all that, though, the Premier League is back, and Match Week 2 starts this weekend, but also the third weekend of the Championship starts on Friday night. We will have Sheffield Wednesday welcoming Leeds United Friday at 8 o'clock. Sheffield Wednesday, who have a topsy-turvy results to their new season, a 4-0 win on the opening day and a 4-0 defeat last weekend sees them in a difficult position at this moment in time. They host Leeds United, who haven't had the best start to their campaign either. 2 draws from their opening 2 games. 2 sides with a lot to prove if they want to get up the table this season. That's our Friday night game here on LFS. Also, don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, we are now on audio platforms, and this episode, if you've missed any of it, you can rewatch it again here on LFS or on Patreon as well, which will be up a bit later on this evening, and also in the next 24 hours. If you want to listen on the go on audio platforms, you can do now, Spotify and Amazon Music, and this episode will be up within the next 24 hours. For now, that's this week's LFS podcast. We're back at the same time next week for more action. We'll be rounding up the Premier League and the final week of the transfer window. Lots to look forward to. For now, thanks very much for watching. Have a good afternoon. Bye bye.